Okay, we're going to review a little bit about solving equations today. First thing I have here at the top of the page is kind of a review of what we went over on lesson 3 about the 4-step method for solving equations. When you're solving equations, your ultimate goal is to get the variable by itself. So you start by simplifying each side, adding or subtracting, get the variables on the same side, adding or subtracting constants, that's numbers without a variable, so that the variable term is by itself, and then dividing to remove a coefficient from a variable. And if you look back at the lesson 3 notes and then the notes we did in class, that will help you get some more details. Now, some more equation solving tips we have here is that if a variable is negative, remember you can change all the signs in the equation to make it positive. In other words, if I have something like negative 2x equals 4, I could switch the signs and go 2x equals negative 4 if I wanted to. That way that I have a positive on my variable. Sometimes people would prefer just to divide by the negative 2. Some people don't like dividing by negative, so you can always switch all the signs on every single term to remove a negative from an equation. Another thing that's worth mentioning is that it's a lot of times easier to remove negative terms instead of subtracting to move positive terms. I have 2 examples here. You can see on the one on the left-hand side, you have just added the 2x, and you very quickly have a 5 equals 5x, so you could divide both sides by 5 and come up with an x equals 1 very quickly. If you try to get rid of the positive, though, by subtracting 3x from both sides, you have a 5 minus 5x equals 0. You need to subtract 5 again, so I get a negative 5x equals negative 5, and I divide both sides by negative 5. So negative 5 divided by negative 5 is positive 1. So that is a helpful way to do that. One third tip is you can multiply any number to remove a fraction, and we'll do an example of it down here. So one thing you can do is you can multiply by the denominator to remove a fraction. If you had a calculator handy, you could solve this by dividing by 2/3. But if you do not have a calculator, it's going to be a lot easier to take this and multiply everything by 3. So when I multiply by 3, 2/3 times 3, the denominator just cancels, and I have 2x. The numerator stays, the denominator is gone. Don't forget to do 4 times 3 is 12. And then divide both sides by 2. So I get an x equals 6. On the next one, you see I have more than one fraction, so I could multiply by 2, and then I would have a fraction left, and then I'd multiply again. But a quicker way to do it is to multiply by the common denominator. If you're not sure about how to find the common denominator is the smallest number that every denominator divides into. And a good way to start is to look at the largest denominator. So the largest denominator is 4. And I say, oh, 2 will divide into 2, 2 will divide into 4. So we'll go ahead and try this. So if I were to multiply everything by 4, I'd have 1/2 of 4 is 2, because 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I have a 2x. Don't forget to multiply your 1 times 4 is 4. And then 3/4 times 4, the 4 just cancels, and that leaves me with the 3. And then what I could do is I could add the 4. So that gives me a 2x is 7, and divide by 2, and that gives you an x equals 3.5. And remember, at any time on these videos, you can pause them, you can rewind them if you want to watch an example again. You can kind of go at your own pace through these videos. The next one, I still have 2 fractions again. In this case, multiplying by 4 won't take care of that 3. The common denominator is actually 12. So the quickest way to do it is to multiply everything by 12. If you multiply by 4, you could go through a second time and multiply by 3. But the quickest way is, since 4 and 3 both divide into 12, multiply by 12. So 12 times x is 12x. 1/4 of 12 is 3, because 12 divided by 4 is 3. 1/3 of 12 is 4, because 12 divided by 3 is 4, and don't forget to multiply the 1 times 12, which is 12. Now in this case, I have variables on both sides, so if you have variables on both sides, we want to subtract 4x from both sides. That's going to give me an 8x minus 3 is equal to 12. And then I'm going to add the 3, which will give me an 8x is 15. Notice first thing I did was subtract to get all the variables together, and then what I did was add to get the variable term by itself. Now I can take this 8x equals 15, divide both sides by 8, and that will leave me with an x equals 15 divided by 8, and that fraction, since it's reduced, is an acceptable final answer.